And welcome, my friends, to another expedition in truth. My name is Bryn Souls, and I'm the host of this program called The Zone of Reality. And on this program, what we do is I talk about the issues and topics of the day and deal with the reality in them. That's what I'm all about. I deal with the reality in them. And today, not being any exception, and this is not a new program for me. This is indeed not a new program for me. I've been on the air before, and I had some friends who said to me, been on me for about actually over a year, that I should get somehow back in being on the air in some form. So here I am. I'm back, and like I said, this program deals in reality. Nothing wrong with fantasy. I like fantasy too. I like Star Wars and things like that. Nothing wrong with fantasy, but I deal mainly in reality. When it comes to hard topics, everyday topics, I deal in reality. I don't deal in fantasy land. I don't deal with political correctness. I hate political correctness. It's cowardly to begin with. First of all, it's cowardly, and it's just a refuge for those who want to change reality. That's all it is. Just a refuge for those who want to change reality. And that's not what this program's about. It's called the Zone of Reality, and that's what we deal with. So I thank you for joining in on me on this first endeavor. Now, I ask that you bear with me on the audio and the visual that I'm going to try here. We're new at this. I'm not only here by myself. I got my pal Brian with me. And we're new at this, so give us a break. This is our very first program here on YouTube. We're going to be launching off in a podcast very soon, next month in March. So bear with us with the audio and the visual and such. Just bear with us, okay? All right. I'm going to start off this program with something that personally I've talked to other people about, and being a retired corrections officer, I pretty much know what I'm talking about here, dealing with this subject. This subject that I'm talking about today on today's program is about, do you remember the ex-teacher in Florida, Stephanie Peterson, who was arrested and found guilty of having sex with her 14-year-old student? And that's what I'm going to be talking about right now. I'm going to come right out the box and say it. Personally, I don't believe she did anything wrong. I'm going to say it again. Stephanie Peterson, in my opinion, she did absolutely nothing wrong. And, if you can argue the facts with me about it, you can say, well, the law says this and the law says that. Well, guess what? I'm not talking about the legality of the case, of what happened. I'm not talking about the legality at all. I'm talking about the moral stature of the case, the moral implications of the case. Now, she was sentenced. She went to trial before a judge instead of a jury and was found guilty of having sex with a minor. That's the legality of it, and she was imprisoned. The judge put her in prison for 3 years, which I'm about to launch into. Put her in prison for 3 years for spreading her legs. Now I want you to think about that for a second. She was put in prison for 3 years for spreading her legs. Yeah, that's what we build prisons for. That's what we spend our millions of dollars on all across the country every year. To put beautiful young women like this that you see on the screen. That's Stephanie Peterson. She was 26 at the time, and she fell in love with a 14-year-old student, young man, a teenager, 14 years old, young man. Fell in love with him, and she expressed her love for him in the ultimate way that a lot of women can, or believe that they can. She had sex with him and gave him sex whenever he wanted it. I want you to bear that in mind. Gave him sex whenever he wanted it, and at the time, believe me, he wanted it. He was a willing participant. Okay? A willing participant, absolutely. Stephanie Peterson's lawyer was absolutely correct. He was a willing participant, and you can't force a male to have sex unless he's aroused. Okay? But that's why she was put in prison. All right? Now, the moral implications of this, I'm getting to it right now. She had no business being in a prison. Being an ex-correction officer, I can tell you that. She had no business being sent to prison for 3 years for having sex with a 14-year-old lover. By the way, what she told him over and over again, told his parents, told everybody that she knew of, that she could trust, that she was definitely unmoved, unlitigated, in love with him, and that she wanted to marry him in about 2 to 3 years. She wanted to marry him actually in 2 years when it became quote unquote legal. Okay? But her mother, I'm going to talk about this later on. Her mother, the boy's mother, the young man's mother objected and told her to stop seeing him. She was in love with him. She couldn't. She kept talking to him. She kept seeing him. She kept giving him sex when he wanted. So she's the one that turned her over reported her to authorities. The young man's mother. Okay? Now, he's 14 years old. She was 26 at the time. Big deal. So what? So what? She's 26, he's 14. They had sex. Like this doesn't go on every day. I got news for you. It goes on every day all around this planet and has been doing so since the dawn of time. Since the dawn of time, it's been going on. There's nothing strange or unusual about it. Nothing at all. As a matter of fact, and I was reading some of the comments over the time since she's been arrested, and it really irked me some of the things some of the females were saying about her. It really irked me and got on my nerves. They were saying horrible things about her. They were calling her a pedophile, this or that, a rapist, this, everything you can think of under the sun. And women have a tendency, you women that I'm speaking to about this, you have a tendency to attack and hate women that are beautiful. You have a tendency to attack and hate them. Why you've always had this tendency to attack and hate beautiful women that have natural beauty, like Stephanie Peterson here, we men will never know, other than you're just jealous. And you can't stand to see a beautiful woman because you fear them. You think that they're going to get the upper hand over you over some job position or some social position because they're more beautiful than you are in your mind. That's sick. Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you. The history of this thing goes way back. During the times of ancient Greece, fathers would take their sons to brothels to introduce them to older women to teach them about sex. Heck, they're still doing it in France. They're still doing it in Germany. And there are parts in the Philippines where if a young man, 14, 15, 16 years old, if he's out gambling in the streets and he's won a lot of money, or he's in a club where they allow him to come in and he wins a lot of money, guess what? Here's another reality check for you. The women will pounce on that young man, pounce on him, try to seduce him to separate him from his money. Okay? And some of them go for it, some of them don't. But it's no big deal. I mean, young men have been having sex with older women since the dawn of time, and they still are. Heck, all you got to do is go down. You can go down to Mexico. I had a friend of mine from Mexico. When this story broke, and I was talking to him about it, he said, and these were his words. He said, "I don't understand what the big deal is." He said, "In Mexico, that happens. And nobody's put in jail. Nobody's prosecuted. If it happens, it happens. If the young man gets lucky, he gets lucky with an older woman. So what? That was a sign of manhood. That was a sign of street creds. And speaking on that, when I was a teenager, I grew up in a rough neighborhood. All right, I grew up in a rough neighborhood, and of course my brothers did, my friends did. We all went to the same schools, had the same teachers. If we had sex as teenagers, if we got to have sex with an older woman, a beautiful older woman, we got high fives all over the place. Heck, I mean, my brother bought me a case of beer and gave me some money when I was 15 years old and had me drink with his buddies. It was no big deal. It was a sign of street cred, again, of manhood. That's one of the ways you got your street cred. And the woman I had sex with when I was 15 was, guess what? Guess who? My English teacher. That's right. My English teacher. And till this day, Bryn Souls here, that's who I am, the host of this program. Bryn Souls here has no regrets whatsoever. None. To this day. I consider that what happened to me at 15 was a blessing. It was a blessing. I'm telling you. Boy. And you know what my father told me? He said, boys are going to be boys. That's what he said about it. I didn't tell my mother, of course, but I told my dad. And he said, just shrugged his shoulders and he said, well, boys are going to be boys. What do you want me to say to you? Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Oh, man. And I'm going to tell you something, folks. My father, God rest his soul, I loved him so much. But this has been going on since the dawn of time. And for you women, I'm speaking specifically, for you women out there that said nasty, mean comments about Stephanie Peterson. Nasty, mean, hateful comments. Let me ask you something. And you women out there that are, the single women and the married women that made nasty, mean comments. You think the teenage boys don't think about sex? What do you think they think about? Honestly, half the day, half the time, they think about who can they lay? What female, what older woman would they like to have sex with? Let me ask you this furthermore. If Dolly Parton, Kim Kardashian, J-Lo, Beyonce, Sandra Bullock, all singularly, one by one, all together, came into a room where your 14-year-old was, okay, wearing a skimpy bikini and high heels, what thoughts do you think are going through his mind? Honestly, I want you to answer me. What thoughts do you think are going through his mind? Do you think he's thinking about rainbows and unicorns and ice cream? If you believe that your teenage son is just as pure as the driven snow and he never thinks about having sex with an older woman, I got some farmland on Mars to sell you. You hear me? I have some farmland on Mars to sell you. And here's another hint. Hint. You better check under his mattress and see what he's got. You better check his browser history. Well, my days, you'll check under the mattress. But today is browser history. You better check out his browser history and his mattress, as a matter of fact. If you think that your son is pure as a driven snow and he never thinks about sex, and here's another big one that they commented about. At 14, he's just a child. He's just a child. He doesn't know any better. He's a child. Child. I mean, you dumb women that say this. I mean, you make it sound like these young men that are having sex with older women and their beautiful teachers, you're making it sound like, this is what you're making it sound like, that they are 4 and 5 years old. That they don't have a brain in their head unless you're there to put a thought or idea there. That you are the ultimate peak of intelligence and wisdom. The fact that you think that your 14-year-old son or nephew or neighbor, whoever, doesn't think about having sex with an older woman, beautiful older woman, that proves that you lack intelligence, wisdom, and common sense. Because any woman with a brain in her head knows teenage boys, teenage young men are going to be teenage young men, and they know what they think about at least half the time if they're awake. And then the other half, they spend it asleep and dreaming about it. How do you think they get wet dreams? Answer me that. Where do you think wet dreams come from? Subconscious thoughts. And their subconscious thoughts are pretty obvious. Pretty obvious. And, they just kill me with these comments about, oh, he's just a child. He's just a child. Let me explain something to you. At 14, do you know how many young men at 14 have gone off to war? Do you know how many young men at the age of 14 are raising children, starting families of their own? Do you know how many 14-year-olds at that age around the planet are helping their mothers and helping their fathers? And a lot of cases in the poorest countries are the only breadwinners to the family at 14, at 13, and even at 12. So don't tell me, I don't want to hear this garbage about 14, he's just a child, he doesn't know any better. Well, if that is the case, why is it, and I believe it's in New Jersey, we had a case where 3 14-year-olds, 3 of them, and a 12-year-old were arrested for raping a 27-year-old woman. No, she was 30, pardon. Arrested for raping a 30-year-old woman. Held and tried as adults. All 4 of them, including the 12-year-old. Okay? All 4 of them, including the 12-year-old. Oh boy. In Texas, a 14-year-old was accused of raping a 21-year-old woman. Okay? Tried as an adult. Jesus. And the list, I got a whole list of this stuff. 14, 13-year-old, 13 years old, accused of raping a woman. Let me ask you women a question. Since you so believe that this young man in this case with Stephanie Peterson, who was 14, is just a child, that you keep saying over and over again, he's just a child. Well, let's say that same 14-year-old, or maybe a different 14-year-old, doesn't matter, or 13-year-old, or 15-year-old. Let's say one night you're coming out of a store somewhere, one night, and he walks up to you just as you're getting in your car, pulls out a Glock, and points it right against your temple, and tells you, give me your money. Give me all you've got in your pocket, in your purse, everything. Give it to me. Give me your credit cards. And if you're wearing any jewelry, he takes that. Then he proceeds to pistol whip you within an inch of your life. Pistol whip you while you're begging him to stop. Points the gun at you again. Threatens to shoot you. Pistol whips you yet still again. Then finally, after he leaves you on the pavement, bleeding from your face, from your head, from everywhere and your outer extremities, takes your car and drives off. Now the police catches him later on. You're in court with him. Now, according to your theory, I'm going to let you answer this. Are you actually going to stand up before the judge, before the prosecution, and say, oh, let him go? He's just a child. He's too young. He doesn't realize what he's doing. Or do you want to see him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law as an adult? Honestly answer that question. Honestly. Oh, yeah, it's a different story when it hits home. It's a different story when it turns out he's a little criminal, isn't it? You can't have it both ways. You can't say, he's just a child. He didn't know what he was doing when he had sex with her. I guarantee you he was stiff and hard and ready to have sex with her, and he did. Well, in this case of Stephanie Peterson here. He was absolutely ready, and there's no doubt about it because he had sex with her on various times, whenever he wanted. Matter of fact, whenever he wanted, he had sex with her. Now, my father told me, he said, boys are going to be boys, but if you get her pregnant, you better be prepared to take care of her. Here's another picture of Stephanie Peterson in a bikini. What 14-year-old is going to deny that if she came on to him and said, I want to have sex with you? You mean to tell me that 14-year-old doesn't know any better after seeing that? Please. Please, it's pathetic. If you believe that, you need mental help. Please. My goodness. Oh, boy. Man, Stephanie Peterson was, like I said, spent 3 years in jail for spreading her legs. That's absolutely ridiculous and absolutely a waste of the taxpayers' money. Absolutely. Jeez. And if this 14-year-old, since the 14-year-old knew better, how come he isn't in jail? How come he isn't spending time? Why is that? He knew what he was doing. He assisted. He was a willing participant in having sex with this woman. Why isn't he in jail? See, there's that double criminal standard again about, well, she has sex. If he has sex with an older woman, he doesn't know any better. Well, if he beats her brains out and takes her money and robs her and then has sex with her, or he rapes her, oh, absolutely, he knew what he was doing. No. You can't have it both ways. Either he does or he doesn't. That's ridiculous and is illogical. Absolutely illogical. And the laws in this country have broken down to a point now where I'm telling you, and I'm going to be talking about this like on my third program, we need to tear it down and start all over again. Because there are too many cases in this country right now happening to black people and white people where justice, the victims are just victims. They're not being served justice. Absolutely. So I'm going to be talking about that in the third program. But back to this. Stephanie Peterson only did what was normal and natural for human beings to do. You want more proof? Okay, listen to this. I'm not going to tell you how they reached this conclusion until at the end. But I'm going to tell you this. The AMA, hear me? The AMA, American Medical Association, just came out recently within a few years, past couple of years, and said that for an adult to be attracted to a 14, 15, or 16-year-old is not unusual, is not pedophilia, and it is absolutely normal and natural for them to do so. How they reached this conclusion, I'm going to tell you again, say it again. The AMA, and about 3 years ago, reached the conclusion that if an adult is attracted to a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, or 16-year-old, it is not, repeat, not pedophilia. It is absolutely normal and natural. That's what the AMA has come to the conclusion. They came to that conclusion. They said by years of study of the subject, years of study of different cultures around the planet, and by the natural instinctive urges of human beings. How many of us wouldn't be here today if our great-grandfather or our great-great-grandfather or our grandfather, who was 30 years old, did not get together with that 14-year-old young woman? How many generations, how many people would not be on this planet if they didn't do so? Or that 50-year-old who got together with that 15-year-old and had children? How many of us, honestly, would not be here? There are those of you, especially you women, that said these dumb things about Stephanie Peterson. I'm willing to bet half of you wouldn't be here if great-grandpa hadn't done what he did. I'm willing to bet that. Absolutely. Stephanie Peterson, again, she was in love with him. She professed her love to him. He reciprocated. She told everyone she wanted to marry him in about 2 years when it was quote-unquote legal. And this judge, Zambrano, down there in Florida, federal judge, I watched the video, sat there and smirked and smiled when he sentenced her. Even though she got letters from professional white-collar people of every genre you can think of that know her family, said she's not a criminal, she's never gotten a traffic ticket in her life. Please show her mercy. Please spare her. The judge didn't want to hear it. He smirked and smiled, and then, even after being told she's bipolar and was on medication, bipolar and on medication, he still didn't want to hear it and sentenced her to 3 years in prison. Yeah, real smart move, Judge. That's why we send people to prison. That's why we build prisons, to send beautiful young women like that into institutions like that, where they can get worse. They can get far worse, mentally worse. And by the way, she told the judge that she tried to commit suicide because so many evil women out there like to make comments on YouTube about her, made her feel so bad that she tried to commit suicide. I got a hold of Stephanie Peterson, and I blessed her, and we talked very briefly. And I encouraged her to move on, to go on. I told her she did nothing wrong. She should not be ashamed of anything. She did nothing wrong. Your heart does not pick who you fall in love with and when you do. Name one of us who said, okay, I'm going to fall in love with this time with that person. Who one of us can say that? Huh? None of us can. None of us. Jesus. Stephanie Peterson was persecuted, was punished. She was punished because she fell in love with a 14-year-old. Just like Mary Kay Letourneau was punished. Because society doesn't like that. Well, I don't say society doesn't. The news media mainly hates it. And Hollywood hates it. Because they're so PC now that they do not want to see boys being boys. They don't want to hear stories about boys just being boys. And one of the things that they do, or young men being young men, one of the things young men do is they seek older women for sex. They do. That is a reality. This is a zone of reality, folks. The name of this program is a zone of reality, and that's what we speak about here. The reality, dealing with reality. There are too many people that want to deal in fantasy and try to change reality into what they want it to be. No, reality is reality. You can't change it to what you want it to be. That's just the bottom line. And here's another picture of Stephanie Peterson. That's just the bottom line. And, let me adjust this here. Got caught up. And that's just the way it is. We're either going to learn to live in reality or we're not. Stephanie Peterson, thank God, is out of prison right now. She has to, in addition, register as a sex offender and do community service. She has to register for the rest of her life, which is something that is incorrect, grossly incorrect. And my sources tell me that there are people working to change that law because you legally made a mistake. You shouldn't have to pay for it for the rest of your life. There are murderers that have gotten less time than Stephanie Peterson. There's a woman, Minnesota police officer that shot a young man in a car. He was unarmed, killed him, shot him dead in the chest, and killed him. She just received, get this, for that, she just received 16 months in jail. 16 months for taking a life. And I can give you other examples of this. But Stephanie Peterson, the judge, in his cold-hearted way, and he's gonna face the Lord for this, gave Stephanie Peterson 3 years. Now you compare that. Person murders another, and there's plenty of examples of it, gets 16 months, 2 years. She gets 3 years for spreading her legs. Spreading her legs for the young man that she loved. Folks, this is ridiculous. I'm glad she's out. I'm glad I got in touch with her to encourage her. I'll continue to get in touch with her and encourage her. Stephanie Peterson did not deserve this in no way, shape, or fashion. You talk about a travesty of justice. Yes, this has been a travesty of justice because she never should have served it to begin with. She never should have served it to begin with. And on the next program, folks, on my next program, I'm going to be talking about the young man she had the affair with. I'm going to get on his case because there are a couple of things that you need to know about him, what he did, that is relevant and absolutely boils my blood. So until next time, I thank you for joining me on this first program, The Zone of Reality. The Zone of Reality. I'm Bryn Souls. And I'll see you next time on The Zone of Reality, folks. Keep watching for me. And be sure I'll let you know exactly when the podcast is going to start. Thank you, folks.